All right, future CPAs, let's get real. You spend months, literally months, learning how to build obligations. But then you get to the part where you have to remember all the ways they just go away. And the terms, oh my gosh, condonation, novation, confusion. It's enough to make your brain just completely shut down. Well, not today. Forget the textbook memorization. We're going to install 5 super simple brain hacks to make these concepts stick. I mean, really stick, all the way to the LECPA.
So think about it for a second. You have this binding legal tie, this juridical necessity. It feels so solid. So how on earth does it just, poof, vanish into thin air? What are the secret escape hatches in the law? That's the mystery we are solving today.
And here's our game plan. This isn't your average, boring agenda. This is your brain's cheat sheet. We're going to rebrand these crazy legal terms into something you'll actually remember. The Vanishing Act, the gift, the mirror effect, the equalizer, and the makeover. Ready? Let's dive right into the first one.
Okay, first up is the Vanishing Act. In law class, they call this loss of the thing due. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. The thing you owe literally disappears.
The basic idea here is super simple. Let's say you promise to deliver a very specific, one-of-a-kind painting, and then a freak lightning storm hit your house and the painting is completely destroyed. If it's not your fault, the obligation can be wiped out. Just like that. It's gone.
And here's the legal firepower behind it. Article 1262. Now, don't just read it. Let's pull out the keywords for the exam. Number 1, it has to be a determinate thing, meaning a specific thing. Number 2, the loss must happen without the fault of the debtor. And number 3, this is crucial. It has to happen before the debtor is in legal delay. You miss any one of those 3, and the obligation probably still stands.
Okay, this right here, this slide is a game changer for this topic. I call it the 2 things rule. It's the difference between a determinate thing and a generic thing. So if you promise to deliver this specific car with this specific license plate, that's determinate. If you get swept away in a flood, you're likely off the hook. But if you just promise to deliver a car of the same model and year, well, that's generic. The law says you can just go get another one. You got to remember the Latin phrase because they love putting it on the exam. Genus numquam perit. The genus never perishes. For real, star this in your notes.
All right, let's move on to our second brain hack, the gift. This is the friendly term for what the law calls condonation or remission. Just think of it like this. The creditor is literally giving the debtor the gift of forgiveness.
The key words you need to latch onto here are act of liberality and gratuitous. In plain English, that just means it's totally free. The creditor isn't getting a single thing in return. It's just pure, hey, don't worry about it. But, and this is a big but, just like any other gift, the debtor has to actually accept it for it to count. You can't force someone to accept forgiveness.
So, to make sure this sticks, let's run through the checklist for a valid condonation. First, it's got to be gratuitous, no strings attached. Second, the debtor has to accept it. Third, the debt has to be real and already demandable. Now, number 4 is a classic exam trap. It can't be inefficacious. That's a fancy word that means the creditor can't forgive so much debt that it messes up the inheritance of their own kids. And last, if you're going to do it formally, in writing, it has to follow the same rules as a legal donation.
Now for our third brain hack, which is one of my favorites, the mirror effect. The legal term is confusion or merger. Don't think of it as being confused. Think of it as the debtor and creditor becoming one person, like they're looking in a mirror and seeing themselves.
I mean, just think about it logically. Can you actually owe money to yourself? Can you sue yourself for payment? Of course not. It makes no sense. The moment the role of the debtor and the role of the creditor land on the very same person, the obligation just kind of implodes. It has nowhere else to go.
And Article 1275 sums it up perfectly. The key phrase is meeting in one person. A classic example is, say, you owe your dad 100,000 pesos. Then, sadly, your dad passes away and you're his only heir. You inherit all his assets, including the right to collect that 100,000 pesos from yourself. See? You're now both the debtor and the creditor. The obligation is extinguished by merger.
Okay, so we've seen what happens when the debtor and creditor become the same person. But what if they're 2 different people who just happen to owe each other money? Well, that brings us to brain hack number 4, the equalizer, also known as compensation. Think of it as hitting the reset button on mutual debts.
It's really just common sense, right? If I owe you $500 and, hey, you owe me $500, why would we go through the hassle of exchanging cash?
Our debts just cancel each other out. They equalize. It's the most practical way to settle things.
But for this to happen automatically by law, what we call legal compensation, there's a strict 5-point checklist you have to know. Look at the slide. Both people have to be principal debtors and creditors to each other. The debts have to be the same kind, like money for money. Both debts must be due. You can't offset a debt that's not payable yet. They also have to be liquidated, meaning the amounts are certain. And finally, there can't be some third party trying to claim one of the debts. You nail these 5 points, you've nailed compensation for the exam.
Okay, time for our final, and let's be honest, probably the trickiest brain hack, the makeover. The legal term is novation. This is where you extinguish an old obligation by replacing it with a completely new one. It's giving the debt a total makeover.
Novation is all about transformation. You can change the what of the deal, like changing the object or the main conditions. Or you can change the who of the deal. That means either swapping out the debtor for a brand new one or having a new creditor step into the shoes of the old one. Either way, the original obligation is gone and a new one is born.
Now, when we talk about changing the debtor, there are 2 types that always trip people up: expromission and delegation. So here's a super easy mnemonic to burn into your brain. Delegation starts with the D, just like debtor. In delegation, it's the original debtor who kicks off the change. Simple as that.
I'm telling you, screenshot this table right now. It's pure exam gold. Notice that for consent, the creditor has to agree in both scenarios. Easy enough. But look at the big differences. The initiator, in expromission, it's a third party. In delegation, it's the original debtor. And that directly affects the insolvency rule. In expromission, the original debtor is off the hook if the new guy can't pay. But in delegation, because the original debtor suggested the replacement, they might still be liable. That distinction is a guaranteed exam question.
Whew, we have covered a ton of info. So before we wrap up, let's do a super quick rapid-fire review to really hammer these brain hacks into your memory. Let's lock it in.
Ready? Let's go. Loss is the vanishing act. Condonation is the gift. Confusion is the mirror effect. Compensation, the equalizer. And novation is the makeover. Seriously, just say that list out loud a few times. It'll stick, I promise.
All right, and I'll leave you with this final challenge question to really test if you've got this. Out of these 5 modes we talked about, which one is the most likely to show up as a tricky question on the CPA exam that involves a guarantor? I'll give you a little hint. Think about the rule that the accessory follows the principal. Which one of these could wipe out the main debt, but maybe, just maybe, not the guarantor's obligation? Chewing on that question is how you level up from just knowing the rules to actually acing the exam. Good luck with your studies.